Here with the Coach and the Geek, Mark Adams and Jeff Van Fleet. Guys, thanks for coming on. This is great. Mark, first off, what do you got there? What are you drinking? I saw some juice.
I heard it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and so I thought a Mai Tai would be appropriate for today.
Okay. Jeff, what do you got?
I got a glass. That's about it. Okay. Somebody's got to keep it together.
Yeah, no doubt.
Look, he's spilling all over his face.
I know. I couldn't get my mouth.
Clean yourself up, enthusiasts. It's awesome to talk to you guys, and I'm glad we're all staying safe. And I know people have a lot more time on their hands. I just got to tell the story. I mean, Mark and I, we were down in Fort Worth, Texas, getting ready for the American Athletic Conference basketball tournament, which never happened, of course. And we're driving in the car on the way over there, and Mark's got this book. I said, "What is that?" He's like, "That's my new book." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, let me see it." He's like, "I will in a minute." And Mark was signing it for me, and he gave me a copy, and I was like, "This is awesome." And I read it, and I love it. I thought you guys just did an awesome job, so I wanted to kind of tackle right into it first. First, how do you put this together and co-write something like this, and where did this idea come from? And I mean, it's pretty cool.
You want me to take a shot at that?
Yeah,
go for it, Jeff. Yeah.
Well, so great question. Mark and I have known each other for gazillion years. Maybe, those that know Mark, everything's a gazillion years. But anyhow, we were driving down the road one day, going to visit a customer. We both work for my company, Lighthouse Technologies. And we were driving down the road to go visit a customer. And we started talking about his background in coaching, and obviously he's won a lot of games in his career coaching, and but he also took over a lot of teams that just were abysmal when he took them over. I'm like, how do you motivate these guys when they know they're not very good and they haven't won any games since they've been there? Now you come in, how do you get these guys motivated? And they don't really have the talent to do that. And that's what spawned this idea of this book, and created this concept that Mark referred to as the career best effort.
So to be honest about the entire question, Jeff actually said, "Look, I know you've won a lot of games, but I know you lost a lot of games too." That made me feel really good. But he did ask the question about how do you hold people accountable? How do you keep them focused on success when the scoreboard doesn't say success? And I thought, man, what a great question. And so, Mike, what I did was I started to explain to Jeff about a career best effort strategy that I developed over the years, specifically for that specific incident where you're not winning very many games. And so how do you build self-esteem? How do you build confidence? How do you build the right behaviors to be successful for the long haul instead of just worrying about that next win? And the career best effort, Mike, to put it kind of simply is, and it is very simple, is this, that, for example, if I'm guarding you and you take a shot, okay, my job is to go make physical contact with you and then go pursue the rebound. It doesn't take talent to do that. It just takes concentration and effort. And so as I looked and explored that concept, we picked out 5 different defensive types of career best effort strategies, tactics, if you will, and 5 on the offensive end as well. And it wasn't about making shots. It was about taking good shots. It wasn't even about blocking shots. It was about challenging shots. And again, it didn't take any talent to do it, just concentration and effort. Then what we would do is we would actually score you. So, Mike, if I'm guarding you, you take 10 shots because you typically run the give and go. Give it to me and go to hell. I know you like to shoot the basketball, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But Mike never let a pass that he was going to like. So Mike was going to shoot the basketball. Well, if I make physical contact with you 9 times out of 10, that's 90%. We had 5 different areas, offense and defense. So at the end of the game, Mike, if you played 25 minutes and Jeff played 10 minutes, you still would be evaluated the exact same way. And then we found such great success in setting a baseline of expectation that we decided, let's move that off the floor as well. And so our student athletes were challenged to go to class every day, for example. But these were their metrics. They were their strategy is how they would move forward and improve academically. And some of my guys would have a career best effort strategy like, I'm going to ask 2 questions in class every single day. And they'd mark it off as they go. So it was measured, and they held themselves accountable. And we saw that drove some really interesting, successful types of behaviors both on and off the floor. And so when Jeff asked me that question, I explained that to him, and he comes back to me and says, you know what, you should write a book about that. And I said, no, Jeff, we should write a book about that together. And that's how the coach, Mark Adams, and the geek, Jeff Van Fleet, the fictional story, was actually born that day.
Well, and I love how it's put together, you know, as the geek enters into the coach and his staff and helps them develop, you know, strategies using technology and you know, metrics, almost kind of like we're seeing a little bit today with all these like analytics and stuff. But I think it's better than that because it's focused on the person and what they need to do. I mean, instead of just focused on winning, like you said, it's about success and building a culture. You know, I mean, I try to think of some teams. Obviously, the Patriots is the one that comes to mind for me. Of course, they win, but they have a culture, they have success for a reason. I'm wondering how this applies to like other people or businesses. Like I tried to take a lot of out of it and think about personally myself and even working with ESPN, Mark, like, you know, you and I know that. How do you think that relates to other, you know, people and stuff? I mean, Jeff, what's your take on that?
Yeah. So that's the angle that I come from, right? My basketball career ended in, I think, the end of my sophomore year in high school. So I don't have a big coaching or basketball career or football career or anything. So I became a software engineer, and what we were able to develop over the last 25 or so years was an ability to help an organization that's not being successful and assess what's going on and give them a path forward, sort of a step-by-step roadmap path forward. And that's what the geek brought into this story. So that, you know, for the readers that haven't read the book yet or anything, you'll find that the geek ends up getting fired, and he's looking for a new home, and a meet cute sort of occurs with him and the coach, and he gets invited to sort of help the coach solve this problem of one of these terrible losing seasons and teams that just the culture's bad, which aligns really well with a lot of customers that we end up getting engaged with, where there's a lot of infighting, there's politics. You know, I guess I would imagine in a college program, there could be politics between the AD's office and the coaches, and there could be politics between the coaches and assistants, I imagine. And in the business world, same thing exists, right? The marketing department wants one thing, the sales guys want something else, the technology guys are like, hey, we're doing the best we can, and there's a lot of infighting. And this whole approach of this CBE, this career best effort, got me thinking when we were talking about it, it's like, well, you know, I've applied similar things like that, but not quite as formally like that. And, you know, I'm a big data guy, a big metrics guy. And, what I know is I like celebrating success. And if I can't define what success is, you don't get a chance to celebrate. And so in the business world, it's like, well, let's define success so we can go have a drink together and celebrate and, pat each other on the back. So that's kind of how I think it applies, at least in my world.
Mike, think about it in terms of broadcasting as a broadcast partner. When we do games together, are you going to be satisfied with both of us doing our individual things? In other words, we're suffering from the disease of me, or are you and I trying to create a culture of we? A good example in any business would be how you treat people, Mike. I was just telling Jeff today that when I showed up in Fort Worth, you've got the names of every single person that's on our broadcast team so that we can call them by name. That's real connecting with people. That's not just interacting. That's truly connecting. And that comes down to, do you want to suffer from the disease of me as a team, or do you want to flourish in a culture of we? And that's where so many businesses do have siloed approaches to their business. And as Jeff mentioned, there becomes that infighting and all grabbing, what's in it for me? And I want to hold on to it. In today's coronavirus environment, many people are looking at, what can I hold on to? And they want to hold on to it so tightly, instead of thinking selflessly. Many of us in many ways have thought selfishly, just like toilet paper, for example. I mean, it applies to today, where if we truly have a culture of we're looking at ways that we could reach out and help people versus pull back and only take care of our own. That's a great example of what the book is about building that culture of we versus suffering from the disease of me.
over the years, I felt like, you know what, we do a lot of things sometimes thinking that this is how somebody is going to react to it, or this is the way they perceive it. And then once we get enlightened, or we realize, oh, they're taking it a different way, we finally adapt and maybe change our culture a little bit. So what I like that part in the story where the coach recognized that he didn't fight back, he didn't have to defend himself, he kind of knew, and then he made adjustments and got better. I'm always looking for that. I think it's good that we have people that would give us their honest, truth about stuff so we can grow.
Mike, obviously this is written as a fiction, but that portion of the book and many other portions of the book are very, very true. That actually happened to me. I was the head coach at Western Oregon. We were not playing well. I was surrounded by great talent, and I decided to look in the mirror. I obviously had to be doing something wrong because our team was not reaching their abilities individually and collectively. And so I asked my team to come into my office during that 15, 20-minute period and just share with me what I was doing wrong. Tell me point blank. There will be no repercussions from this. Be as honest and as open as you can. And a young man by the name of Brian Counts came into my office. He actually is the son of Mel Counts. Mel Counts played for the Los Angeles Lakers. And Brian came into my office and sat down, and the first thing he said was, Coach, you want me to tell you the truth? I'm going to tell you the truth. You're a fraud. And I sat back and I said, why? And he told me about it. He said, Coach, you always go to practice every day and you tell us to trust the process. Just trust the process. Do the fundamentally established things, and winning and losing will take care of itself. And we'll just keep on getting better. He said, but yet we get down to a close game situation for a last second shot or to win a game, and you break our team huddle with 1, 2, 3 win. Coach, you're a fraud because you care more about winning than you do about the process and success. And you show that during the times when it matters the most to you to win. He said, Coach, don't you think I want to win? This insults my intelligence that we go 1, 2, 3 win. Now, Mike, what a great answer. And I changed that moment. And my coaching career came more full circle at that moment of my life when I realized that my real job was to embody success and exude that success and all those strategies and build that foundation for my players so that they would be better husbands someday, better fathers someday, better sons, better friends, better campus representatives. That's what became my passion. And it was because Brian Counts called me a fraud right to my face. And it was the greatest learning experience that I ever had as a coach. And to me, that's the seminal moment of the book. Leaders have to be willing to hear the truth and accept the truth and then act on the truth. And thank God I did, because my coaching career is based upon all the great relationships I've had with dozens and dozens and dozens of players over my career. And I thank Brian Counts every single day that God brought him into my life and confided in me what I really needed to hear at that one moment.
Yeah, very, very well said. I mean, absolutely. I want to know how this kind of came together, though. Again, Jeff, you were saying, I think earlier when I was talking to you about how do you co-write this? So what were you doing? What were you putting together? What was Mark putting together? How did you get the deal done? How do you get this in print? I just think it's amazing, to even be able to publish something in a book like this. It's just amazing to me. So
yeah, and it's the first book that I've been involved with authoring. I've written a lot of papers and stuff like that, but oh my gosh. And Mark is such a creative guy who can just crank out stuff. I throw an idea out to him, and like I was telling you, sometimes I just get like mental blocks and I can't think of anything. And I'm like, Mark, I don't even know how to write this email to a customer. And like 15 seconds later, I get an answer from him. It's like, here's the whole thing. It's like, what the heck? How did you do that? Right. So, and that's sort of how the book went, right? We talk about it. He's like, hey, I got an idea. And then like, and then there's 2 more chapters. And I'm like, well, what do you think about this? And he's like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. And then I'd write like a little section and he'd like write a section. He's like, okay, I got this whole thing open here. Apply your methodology, your software engineering methodology, apply it here in these chapters, and let's figure out how we can help this team by kind of merging these 2 worlds. Because Mark and I mean, we think differently, we act. I'm an engineer, right? And I think that way. And Mark's not. He's a coach. He's creative. Like he fires and goes, and he just creates stuff. It was a fantastic experience. I'll be honest with you, fantastic experience for me. Maybe up until the last, I don't know, 14, 25, 35 editing revisions.
That's true, and it was truly an agile process. And let me just expand on Jeff's description a little bit. Jeff is process driven, extremely disciplined, you know, likes the details and all those kinds of things. And listen, Jeff can suffer from paralysis by analysis, okay? Mm-hmm. And I am a ready, fire, aim guy. Now think about that. Think about the discussions that we had along the way. But what we did was we incorporated an agile process, which in the software development lifecycle, there's two different ways you can develop the software, which is waterfall, which is very process driven. And then there's agile, which is more like 1960s Haight-Ashbury, all right? It's for those of you that lived in that era. And so Jeff and I really embraced the agile process. We would bounce ideas, as he mentioned, and then we would move forward incrementally. And Mike, I didn't have this whole story in my head. I had the first couple chapters, pulled Jeff in, and then I built on that, and we just went through it day by day. And what's really funny, Mike, look, the editing process overall, we had 7 different people edit this book, okay? From all different walks of life, male, female, you name it, 7 different people giving their opinions. And you talk about having to put your ego on hold and build a culture of we versus suffer from the disease of me. I think Jeff and I both experienced that, but we came through it so well and in such a great, I think, a better friendship and a better partnership from a business perspective because we went through that. And one quick story. There was really only one thing I said no to. All right?
Wait, I was pulling out my mug right here.
Yeah, there was one thing. There was one thing that Jeff changed. It was about the coach was coming in the office. And he went down and got a Mountain Dew or a cup of coffee or something. And Jeff rewrote part of it and said that the coach went down and got a hot mug of coffee. Now, Mike, you've been around coaches. Do coaches ever get a hot mug of coffee? Hell no. They're going to drink Mountain Dew. They want coffee black. Anything that's going to get their juices flowing. And Jeff and I today, we laugh about that like crazy because, you know, in his world, a hot mug of coffee is a good thing. In my world, a hot mug of coffee means you're soft. You got to get tougher, right? So that was one of the editing things that we found really, really funny in the end.
That's great. Yeah, I love that part. Yeah, they had Mountain Dew till 5:45 in the morning, and you went home, got the shower, and came back. I mean, that was great. No, and how about that? Like, how about all the experience you got and learning lessons from putting this together? Like, you know, like you just said there at the end, with all those people having their 2 cents.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's a great point. It's like he said, you know, you listen to all these people with their not just grammar edits, but like they're saying things like, this doesn't make any sense, or what were you guys thinking, or, you know, it's like you could kind of take that personally, you know. But, you know, one of the things the book talks about and we live is this idea of lessons learned. And that's why the book's written like with those sort of 1 to 5 page quick chapters and a lessons learned at the end of it to give you something to think about, you know, a little note section in the back, because we live by this thing we call lessons learned. And I'm sure even after doing this, we'll sit around and we're like, okay, what did we do well? What could we do better? And we do it in everything, whether it's our Christmas party or it's a contract with a customer or anything, because we're all about how do you get better if you aren't willing to ask that question. And that's kind of how we both feel about life.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I like the best about it, guys, is that you have those lessons in bold, you know, after every couple pages or something that you talked about, because sometimes you read a book and you think, oh, I like that, or I like that. And unless we're sitting there underlining everything, it was kind of cool to have a nice little recap about what you got out of that situation. And if you go through the book, you can find all those in bold, and it's pretty cool. So it's just very well done. Of course, we get it on Amazon, right? Is that where everybody's going?
Absolutely.
It's pretty much
$17.95 for the hard copy version on Amazon.com, $9.95 for the Kindle version. And Mike, I think it's a fascinating read. It was certainly a fascinating process that Jeff and I went through. Jeff just did a tremendous job, and I obviously have tremendous respect for Jeff, and we have great personal love for each other, especially having lived this whole process together in the way that we did. And we truly built a better culture of we. And I think that overall, too, Jeff's process driven towards success and my addiction to winning, there was that constant competitive struggle, even during the book. And it was fascinating for me to be a part of. And listen, I read the book twice. I love it. So I hope people will read it as well and enjoy it.
You know, figuring out how to get it up on Amazon might have taken a couple of days. Mark tells people, "Oh yeah, it's a piece of cake." I'm like, "It's because he didn't freaking do it." So
Yeah, that's true.
That's great stuff. Hey, this is awesome doing this. You guys are the best. I appreciate it. Mark, I'm looking forward to getting back on the air with you, down the road. I know we got a little ways to wait for that. Jeff, good getting to know you as well. And congrats on putting this out. An awesome job. I hope people will pick it up. We all have a lot more time, obviously, most of us now anyway. So stay safe out there. And thanks for coming on to do this.
Thanks, Mike. I love you, man. You're a great partner.
Thanks,
too,
Mike. Yeah, it's been fantastic. I appreciate you having us on.
You got it. All the best. Stay safe.